Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Instructional Policy Meeting this first day of May 2023. First thing on the agenda is the minutes. Any questions or comments on the minutes?
No.
Going once, going twice? Nothing? All right, we'll move to our next item, Business Affairs.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. So we have two items that you're going to see on the Business Affairs agenda that I just want to bring your attention to. And one of them is Total Education Solutions, where we are going to be looking at payment for special education students to include some of the special education services. That this is an organization that we have used in the past, and we are looking for the contract for next year. And so that item is on the agenda. It's the general fund. And then we also have another agenda item for early childhood education. And again, it's a service agreement with the Science Bubbles activities for the early learning program at our various ELP sites. And so that cost is on there as well, but that will come out of the Early Childhood Education Fund. So I just wanted to bring your attention to those two items.
Okay. Any questions? No questions, no comments? All right, we'll move to the next agenda item, College and Career Academies.
Okay, thank you. So actually, we're going to, if that's okay, the College and Career Academy are the updates. I'll go through the updates really quickly and then do our presentations last, if that's okay. So if we want to move to updates 3.01, as usual, you could see we have updates from the College and Career Academy. I will just try to click on them really quickly so that everyone can see the update. As always, we don't read the update to you, but you can see there are some experiences from elementary school at with the Akron Art Museum. And so some of our fourth grade scholars and the experiences they've had there. Culinary Pathway from Bookdale and Garfield. And that is in collaboration with the Zoo Culinary Challenge. And then a leadership conference from BP for our scholars that are part of BPA. And again, look at them in their suits over at Bookdale. So make sure that you take a chance to read that. And more about Bookdale. Again, some seniors right here from cosmetology, and they did their program within the last few weeks. So hopefully some people have experienced that. So again, that's for the College and Career Academy, so you'll be able to read that update. We have an FRC update, and I'm not going to get into detail with that because one of our presentations today is about FRC, is about the Family Resource Centers. But as always, just give you an update on things that they have been doing. Of course, we have 4 in existence already, and just what has been happening lately in there. We always give you the engagement activities that have been taking place in our 4 FRCs, Family Resource Centers. We have a Stay in the Game update. And so it's time for our partnership renewal with the Cleveland Browns Foundation. And so we will be moving forward with that. And then we also have this special activity coming up where they call it the OTA sessions that are happening at the Cleveland Browns over in Berea, I believe. They are asking or extended an opportunity for 40 of our students to come over and to the private session and witness OTAs this May in a couple weeks. So that.
How are they going to decide what 40 students attend?
You want to talk about that? Great question for Dr. Lash.
Great question. As we were thinking about May, the month of May, and typically seeing declines in attendance, we thought we would pair it with attendance and target it to our high schools, looking at, what could high schoolers kind of become excited around. So we have affectionately come up with this Every Day in May kind of slogan, encouraging our high schoolers to be present at school every day in May for an opportunity to be entered into a drawing to attend this practice. So, yeah.
So when they go there, what are some of the things they're going to be learning once they're there with the group? I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Alexander, it's probably more fun than learning, but definitely the experience to be there, watch the players, probably learn how much smaller they really are when you see them in person, and to kind of interact with other students. I've been actually once before, last May, I believe, but to interact with other students from other districts and have the opportunity, hopefully, to meet a player.
So there'll be other kids from other school districts there?
Yes.
Oh, that'll be nice for them. So it's more kind of a reward for some of our kids who are having good attendance?
Absolutely. That's how we are using it. Oftentimes, stay in the game. It's all around attendance. But oftentimes the Browns will, when they have those opportunities, they allow us to be able to determine how we select students so that you kind of vary it a little bit, but needing something to encourage our students for the month of May, and especially our high schoolers, we thought it'd be great to tag it along with attendance.
Okay, I think that's good. Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then we have one more update for you, which is from Teaching and Learning, and I will just pull it up briefly so that you can see. I'm pretty sure it's the newsletter from Teaching and Learning where you can hear the scoop in terms of what's happening from all of the departments. And we do have, and this one is the newsletter they sent out, but we do have a presentation from Adam Motter here today as well about the social studies adoption. So you'll hear more about that. But again, you can read all about what's happening in the Teaching and Learning department. And we also have the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning here with us today, Nicole Vitale, as well. Okay?
And the calendar has all the events
For the month of May. The calendar in the Teaching and Learning area is included in there, so make sure you turn on your mic. All right, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over I'm going to start with the Family Resource Center. So at this time, I'm going to pull up the presentation for Dr. Lash.
All right, thank you. So really quickly, we just thought we would just talk about family resource centers and give an update as to what we are thinking. And so always want to refer back to our vision of excellence through equity, and particularly as it relates to family resource centers and understanding that this is one of the ways that we attempt and work through eliminating inequities for our students and their families by the opportunities and the resources that are available through the family resource centers. And interestingly, just to kind of center us and remind us, this work actually, the foundation for it really came about with the creation of the community learning centers. And so now having a school as a community hub, we have the opportunity for the next level of work, and that is being able to address some of our non-academic barriers to student success and by way of the family resource centers. So our partnership with United Way of Summit County and Medina County has been very critical in that process for us to be able to offer those wraparound services. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with United Way's bold goals that have now been extended out to 2028. And our partnership with United Way allows us to, again, strengthen the support that we're able to provide to our families. And through our resource centers, we're able to advance United Way's bold goals. And so as we think about family resource centers, It's important to note that there are 4 core areas, and they are basic needs, financial empowerment, community health and wellness, and family development. So the programming that happens by way of our Family Resource Centers really focuses on these 4 core areas. And it's a place where our families feel welcomed and they're able to be connected to referrals or different resources in the community to meet their specific need. And just to recap, Dr. Kaver mentioned this, we have our 4 existing family resource family resource centers right now at Helen Arnold, Mickey Bright, North High School, and Robinson. And again, those 4 core areas you see mentioned there. And just to highlight, you saw this on the policy update as well. Some of the things, events and activities, programs that have happened in those areas that we've been able to carry out this year. Thank you. And as we think about our next site for Family Resource Centers, when this work began, and I do honor the work that happened before with Dr. Carla Chapman and under the leadership now of Stancy Sykes. So all of the work and planning that had happened before, the vision was that a Family Resource Center would be present in each of our clusters. And so with the 4 clusters that we have in existence right now, looking at our 5th cluster, we've looked at and identified Higher Community Learning Center. And so interestingly, we have 1 at a high school and 3 at elementary schools. This would be our first location as we look at space and availability. This would be our first location at a middle school. And I must say, Mr. Larry Bender, the current principal, is so very excited to host this in his building and to hear him passionately talk about the needs that he sees among his school community and what a great resource this will be for the students in that cluster. And really, that's it to the update on Family Resource Centers and our thinking around the excitement for our next location.
Any questions, comments? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to mention that there will be an agenda item coming up in May for the next FRC. We will need board approval in order to proceed. United Way is our partner, and the way that it works is that we do the startup costs, and then United Way actually sustain the program for us moving on. So it is just a one-time cost for us in order to start it, and that is to basically purchase the equipment to go in the room. When I say equipment, like the tables and chairs appropriate for FRC, that type of thing, the cubicles that go inside of it, amongst other things that are appropriate for this space so that you can have consulting with the family members when they're coming in and things like that. So we outfit the room basically at the beginning and then hire the person. United Way hires the person that will actually be the employee of the FRC. And so we just do the one-time costs at the beginning, and then through United Way, they carry out the FRC for, the life of the time that we have it afterwards. So you will see that coming up. And if we have no questions, then we're going to shift our gears a little bit to talk about academics. And we have Adam Motter here, our learning specialist for social studies, to present to us. So I'm going to pull up his presentation. You heard from Adam some months ago, those of you that was on IP before, instructional policy, to talk about the process of the social studies adoption. And now we're coming to the end of that process and getting ready in the very near future to go through the board adoption and approval. And so he wanted to come and share with you here today. So Mr. Motter, pass that on.
Thanks, Dr. Kaver. First of all, I do owe this team an apology. I'm kind of a late addition to the meeting. I apologize. Because you meet once a month, it was imperative that we get in front of you today. Dr. Kaver and Ms. Outley will continue to refine as this documentation comes to board. But in this instructional policy, like Dr. Kaver said, the process is down to the wire. The totals are in, the picks are in, and it's time to update this board, this instructional policy team, on where we're at with the social studies adoption. And what we want to do is actually backtrack a little bit first. If Dr. Kaver, if you could click on the guiding document. Before the adoption started, and I know I'm burning your eyes because I know this is kind of small, however, it was critical that in social studies we actually aligned our work to board policy around culturally responsive curriculum. And this work has been ongoing now for over 2 years. And each part of the board policy was actually addressed through frameworks recognized as the best research-based best practices in social studies education around culturally responsive curriculum and instruction. So our team is very proud of this work, and this became the backdrop for what you're about to see next. So we are going to click on one more link before we get started, and I'm going to burn your eyes one more time. And Dr. Kaver, if you could click on that sample evaluation. This is the evaluation instrument that our teams use. You're looking at the secondary one here. I wanted Mr. Alexander to see the secondary one. If you could, there should be a tab, where it says rubric at the tab, you can just click on, there you go. Dr. Kaver is going to scroll down a little bit. That's where we're going to burn your eyes a little bit. But she's going to start scrolling down to about halfway through and just kind of stop wherever she wants. And you're going to start to see how we have red-threaded culturally responsive practices that deal with equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout this assessment instrument. This is the most demanding, precise, and substantive adoption evaluation around culturally responsive curriculum and instruction in the social studies department, I believe, in the history of our department. And all of our goals for our district are red-threaded throughout this evaluation instrument. The evaluation instrument took about 11 to 12 hours on average for our teachers. The teachers in this last school year had lots and lots of challenges, and they are the real heroes in this process as they stepped up and evaluated what we deemed to be priorities, along with all the other social studies education priorities, and really fine-tuned and focused what we want our next generation to have as curriculum in our social studies courses. So I know we kind of burned your eyes there a little bit, but with the scrolling, but you did get to see, hopefully you got to see plenty of examples of how DEI and our equity policies in Akron Public Schools are red-threaded in that evaluation. So these other two links we're going to come back to in a minute. We're going to look at a few slides first, and I can just click and go.
Did we get sent copies of these documents?
I will make sure that you get them.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that, Carl. I did want to share with you, and again, we're backtracking a little bit, but the goal of social studies is always for students to understand and practice civic rights and responsibilities, but to become an active citizen, they need to be able to critically think about issues in our world today. They need to be able to examine multiple perspectives and vet those perspectives for accuracy, come to their own conclusions, and engage in civil discourse. And that's not just the made-up goal of social studies. That's the goal of social studies through the Ohio Department of Education, through the National Council for the Social Studies, and our North Star in social studies. That's what we really want students to connect with. So the priorities in this adoption, as you can see, the DEI SEL work, inquiry learning, teaching through multiple perspectives. One of our consultants that helped us support board policy, Dr. LeGarrette King, he says that, it's not history, it's histories. And you're looking through multiple perspectives to get a better understanding. And then, of course, the idea of teaching controversial and unsettled issues and working with our students in safe places where they have voice and agency around connecting their world and engaging in civil discourse and understanding it. So those are the goals that our adoption teams and our steering team knew that those were the priorities in this adoption.
How does this relate to some of the issues that are going on today in today's society? There's a lot of things that are going on. How does it intertwine and relate to that so the kids can get what's going on now as well as in the history in past, and also as far as history, all histories, and he said histories, that all histories get entwined in there, meaning all the history. So how does that work a little bit?
So a couple questions from Mr. Alexander. The first one's first. With the Jalen Walker shooting, for example, our social studies staff got guidance, and we have been working on this for some time. But they got guidance on how to, in our social studies department, on first making sure that our students are safe, that they have a voice, that they're not being judged. And as we work through those protocols, we also have protocols that support having courageous conversations around difficult issues such as race, and making sure the teacher supports a classroom where there are clear agreements and understandings that protect and value everybody. So that's up front. One of our newer models that we are supporting, and we looked for curriculum that supported this model around teaching controversial issues. The leading expert in the country today on teaching controversial issues, her name is Dr. Judith Pace, and she has a framework for teaching controversial issues. She likes to say, first and foremost, a social studies teacher must do no harm, must always be intentional around the types of conversations students are having. And she has lots of strategies that go with that. So we were looking for curriculum that that had those strategies that supported that. Another one of hers is, the first thing a teacher does when they do that is they have to examine their own perspective. They know their kids best, they know their community best, and they know themselves best. So I have to be honest and examine my own point of view and my own understanding, and then as I engage students in uncovering and thinking for themselves about this issue, I need to understand where they're coming from, where our community is coming from, and make sure I do no harm for any student. So that was kind of like the backdrop of what we've done, ensured across the district with our social studies staff to encourage that in the wake of the Jalen Walker shootings. But that's also baked into our curriculum. And we're at the beginning of our journey, not the end of our journey. We got a lot of work to do, and that's on me. I have to step up and make sure that our teachers are able to have courageous conversations with their students and give them agency and voice, because that's what social studies is really about.
And as far as our, it's entwined in as far as all the histories, and not just histories, how does that entwined in there?
Thanks, Mr. Alexander. Yeah, so that's another important thing that we looked for, another important criteria that we looked for in this adoption was how does the curriculum treat multiple perspectives? Not just the traditional perspective, where it's the winner's perspective, but everyone's perspectives. When you look in U.S. history, you can go all the way back to pre-colonial times, right? All the way back to even the 1619 Project. You can go back to colonial times, but you can also see it in the 20th century and the 21st century. And you can see the multiple perspectives of not just one group or who made the law, but who rallied against the law. Who didn't win the fight, what was their perspective. And the historical narrative's gotten so much stronger, and textbook companies have gotten more savvy in ensuring that multiple perspectives are found as students uncover the past. And that was one of our key criteria, is we wanted to pick curriculum that showcased all the different perspectives, and that's always been in social studies, but it's come to the forefront now, as it should, and moving forward, that's how we're going to want our kids to teach their kids.
And because I asked that question, I'm talking too about African American history. So because all kids now are learning about African American history in their homes, whether they're black kids, white, they're Hispanic, or they're learning about it in their homes. So we want to make sure that all our kids learn about that as well.
Yeah, that's been a key component. Very excited about the curriculum that we picked. I believe it's HMH for our African American history class, and as well as I think I updated this group, but I don't think it was both of you. But you may remember this, that we are going to pilot the AP African American History course, African American Studies course next year at Firestone and at Bookdale. So we're pretty excited about that.
I would just like this. Thank you, Mr. Matter. I think you were very clear, and I was tracking right with you. I like when you talked about the critical thinking and analysis that you're looking for learners to be able to do, because ultimately in our schools, the goal is to educate our students in a way historically that they can then become contributing citizens. And so part of that is, like you said, giving the lens from various perspectives. And it just baffles me when we have these talks, if I just must be honest, because I had wonderful history teachers. I really did. Mr. Miner was one of them. But I felt very equipped. And when we get into these discussions about the stories and the perspectives that are being told, I can't help because as some of you may know, I'm a licensed history teacher. Middle to high school. That's what I do. And my undergraduate was history. My master's was history education. And when we look at our standards and what they've been for so long, it's laid out to tell the story. But with history, it's like a dance and how we articulate the story. So, I know people think this information is not present, but it's been present and required to be taught from various perspectives. But it's the accountability of how it's being taught, if it's being taught. I wrote down that bias is always present, and that's okay. We have to unpack that and then see the role that it played in our decision making and in the framework of our society and our laws and why citizenship is important. And so I'm excited when I hear about the adoption of new curriculum and the goals that are set. If I can just be honest, this has always been the goal. It's really, if you're in education, this is not new. It's just so much buzz and agitation has come because somehow we have dropped the ball in accountability. So you have students going through classrooms in U.S. history. It's like, can you accurately teach U.S. history without the transatlantic slave trade? Can you not really talk about how these became institutions in capitalism? You have to go on the journey if you're going to do it properly and to equip our students then to be contributing citizens. So I think the most important thing that I love that you said about what we're doing is that we want our students to be critical thinkers again and to properly analyze. Because in this digital spoon-fed society, they hear buzzwords and now everyone's on the front line and agitating and petition, but for what? Are you going to vote tomorrow? Do you know the people that are in the positions, and do you know the roles that laws play that then trickle down? So I really hope this is getting to a point to whereas, it's not about the divisiveness, but it's about the enlightenment. And when students are connected with the learning, all students, and see the value in the learning of all histories and why it's relevant as an American citizen. Because I think that's what we get away from as a person in America, as an American citizen, why it's important that you know all histories so that we cannot repeat certain things as far as voter suppression, monopolizing of industry. It's so many things that I think our kids are not getting because they're not critically thinking. They're not delineating between perspectives and ideas, and that's a teacher thing. And I don't know how we can adopt this curriculum. We can use these nice words. But the work is, because I know who you are, Mr. Matter. So, and I know you're the real deal. Phenomenal teacher. But it's just, that has to be duplicated in the classroom if you really want to see the change. Because we've always, for a good point, it's been some rich curriculum. Like his rich, good curriculum, essential questions, far before it even became a requirement, delving deeper into the content. So I'm going to get off my soapbox, but this is such a thing for me because it's such a disconnect historically when you can march but you don't vote. You protest, but your first act of business when you turn 18 wasn't to register so that you can make sure tomorrow you were voting or that who is this and that. So I'm excited. I hope they do the work. I'm not trying to be disenfranchised.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. I owe you and Dr. Caver now for being so nice to me. Thanks a lot. I owe you both, and you well deserved. All right, well, let's try to. We'll circle back to some questions.
I'm sorry, one more question. I did have a question after my thing. So with this adoption of this curriculum, how soon after the adoption are we anticipating the implementation, and then what does teacher training look like for that? So we'll adopt after 2 more board meetings, I think, and that'll be sometime at the end of the month the teachers will start their training over the summer. And the teachers get a 4-hour orientation into a new adoption. It's part of our contract and our practice. However, the most important training is just like you said. The 4-hour training, teachers will
review our priorities, our goals, and how to look at our curriculum maps. But then they'll get into the actual digital adoption. How do I get my kids on? How do I make a test? What are the features that I want that support intervention, that support differentiation, all those things. But the real dig is over that course of that first year as we collaborate with teachers, as they collaborate with each other and develop the types of lessons and develop the types of essential questions and inquiry that really force, like you said, students thinking for themselves. That's really where the magic happens, in my opinion, in our adoptions. It's we get in, and then teachers dig into how to collaborate and share high quality teaching and learning. And that's just the first year, right? And in addition, we have some wraparound support. So and that go back to the board policy around culturally responsive curriculum instruction. We're adding 2 new courses next year. One is the aforementioned AP African American Studies pilot at Firestone and Bookdale. We're also piloting a course at Akron Early College that is modern civics. How do I engage in my community in meaningful ways while understanding sort of the geography, the history, the economics of my community? We're going to start it, and then we're going to make sure we understand it, and then we're going to expand it. But so that I think that you're absolutely right. It's not just the book, for sure, the digital textbook. Okay, click the wrong button. So I'm going to kind of sneak through, and then maybe we can take some questions down the road. This slide, just so you know, after the teacher teams made their decisions, they had to perform, they had to communicate out to the steering team. And when they did that, the steering team for each grade band stopped them and said, okay, we have questions, we want to know about this. If they were happy, they would the steering team would recommend the teacher team's recommendations, or they would stop and pause and say, hey, we got to stop and wait. As it turned out, we did get through all our recommendations from the steering team, and you'll get to see that team in a minute. Oops, I'm clicking way too fast. Sorry about that. When the steering team did make their decision, they were looking at, how did it score in an evaluation? What are the key features that address our goals and our priorities? What are some of the most important elements of the first choice that were different from the second choice? That's what the steering team was making sure that our teacher teams were able to address. Just real quickly, as you look through the articulation, the scope and sequence, K through 12, we started at grade 3, and grade 3 is a transition year. They are starting to get into some disciplinary learning, and it's typically self-contained. That third grade is a self-contained classroom. In Akron Public Schools, we have some departmentalization for social studies and science at grades 4 and 5. So it looks a little different, and the curriculum needs are a little different at grades 4 and 5 than 3. For each band, just a quick slide, and I think you're going to see this in a different format in front of the real board, but for this instructional policy, I just wanted you to see that the teams really picked out why the first choice was there was different needs addressed in the first choice. So, for example, in third grade, their needs were around some flexibility for the kids that the second best Savas didn't have. Whereas in grades 4 and 5, it was just the opposite. In grades 4 and 5, Savas was able to both work in a self-contained setting as well as a departmentalized setting better than TCI was, and had different supports. The TCI, couldn't match, particularly grade 4's Ohio history, so it's somewhat of a unicorn. Finding the best at grade 4 is always difficult. So in terms of, and I know I'm kind of going fast, but in terms of what they decided, here you see grades, the middle schools is, Eastern Hemisphere, and then we start our historical courses of early world history and then early U.S. history in grade 8. But again, just to give you a general idea of when the teachers came together, they worked through the steering committee. Hey, this is why McGraw-Hill is best for grades 6, 7, and 8. These are the types of supports we found that meet our priorities, our 4 priorities of DEI, SEL, inquiry, teaching controversial issues, and teaching multiple perspectives, along with everything else that we need. We need the interventions. We need enrichment. We need ease of use. We need a lot of things. But the steering team got to see at each step, hey, this is why this is best, and then the steering team got to vote on it. Here you see grades 9 through 11. These are courses every high school student takes in Akron Public Schools: Modern World, Modern U.S., and American Government. And again, they picked the best possible choice. In this case, it was Savas, which is formerly Pearson. Because of, frankly, Savas, their high school curriculum it's amazing. They have just incredible resources for the teachers to unpack. And to Ms. Jackson's point, it's going to take that master teacher to make sure that students are critically thinking, engaged in the curriculum that Savas has and that offers and is aligned. However, we have a bright future with Savas at those high school classes. By the way, the steering team did have to also go through the electives. We call them singletons, the smaller courses one by one. And we had teachers communicate out to the steering team why they picked what they did. And I know I'm kind of going fast, but for example, you get to see, hey, these were the key points. Our recommendation is this was a strong recommendation that for economics we picked Savas. And for the next one it was Tammy and I picking for sociology and psychology. And each of the reviewers then went through, looked for our priorities, but also was looking to making sure that our graded course of study, that it was aligned to our graded course of study and met our students' needs. Ms. Jackson, here's the African American Studies book, and the HMH edition was absolutely fantastic. It even included BLM in it, which we were excited about. It really did a great job.
I'm interested to see that one. If it includes black, does it include everything, the biases, the issues with black, all of that? Because when I'm talking full perspective, I mean full perspective, the agendas behind. If we're going to get into those hard topics, and we're going to put something like Black Lives Matters in a textbook. And I'm talking about critical thinking and analysis so that they informed in a real way and not just, because I'm black and I'm supporting Black Lives Matter, but really what is the root, what is the core values of such an organization, and does it align? With, to have full perspective, because it may align with what you believe, but if you're talking about deeper level thinking and analysis, they need all the facts. If you're going to put that in there, then put both lenses. not just like a,
Absolutely.
you know. So I'm wondering, I'm just curious when we have something like that.
We'll have the books down here for you, so we'll have to look at them together and find out. It was interesting though that HMH did offer those modern connections, where the other publishers they didn't want to go down that road. Yeah.
I'm immediately going to buy it. If they put it in there, I'm thinking, okay, did they put it in there though?
Right. I will tell you too. We only recommended to the steering team digital text and digital programs that were absolutely strong recommendations that met our needs. We did have two that we're going to have to come back to a year from now. They're not a lot of students, AP Government and AP Euro. They're both at Firestone, but they didn't meet the criteria. So we laid off for a year. We actually had to do that. There were two courses where the options were limited and they weren't great. And as stewards of the public trust, we weren't ready to do it, which is, I guess that's good. But at any rate, so I'm wondering, Dr. Caver, the best way to go back to start. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So you got a chance in this instructional policy to sort of see the process that the steering team went through. The steering team does wish to recommend the choices that the teacher teams made. There are a couple more documents just to quickly look at. I think on I can do slide 2 maybe, or yeah, and then the sample document to the board. I want to just give you the instructional policy team a chance. And again, we'll have this cleaned up. But you can see those recommendations of the publishers below, and hopefully you get a chance to see all the amazing teachers that helped out. And again, this was the hardest adoption we've ever had. These teachers absolutely went above and beyond. They gave hours and hours of their time. They did a fantastic job. And you'll get to see the steering team as well. So the teachers come from all over the district, all the clusters. The social studies steering team was really interesting. We actually had 2 students on the team. We invited 2 students, and it was enlightening. It was wonderful. I'm so glad we did it. At the bottom, there is that documentation. You will see a document like this that the steering team is and the superintendent will be recommending these new resources for our students, our teachers and students for next year. There is one final document to look at, and that is a price tag, just so you guys get a feel for the price. I saved the hard one for the last one. The cost proposal is going to come in somewhere around, I believe it's, I want to say, I'm waiting for it to load. I don't want to say the number wrong. And Dr. Caver, you're on the right tab, but you are going to have to maybe scroll to the right a little bit. These were all the titles, ISBNs, everything's ready to go. Yeah, and you just need to, oh yeah, there it is. And there's our grand total price tag, $2,400,000. This is in line with our previous adoption. I do think it's slightly less than,
It's less than ELA.
which is typical as well.
Yeah, but it also includes the MICVA piece, which is part of the college and career readiness. But that's part of the curriculum. So now that we're not just isolating those strategies, we've brought it together so that the standards that are in the alignment actually line up with the college and career readiness strategy as well. So that's all in this. It's not a separate purchase from a separate department. They've been working together, which is great work. But just know that that's not just the regular adoption. It does include that college and career readiness piece. and all digital access pieces.
10%. And these are 7. This is an adoption for 7 years.
But it also includes the digital component, not just the digital version of the text, but the digital components that go along with the series. So like, there's a lot of online systems and interactive resources for kids.
Yeah, because it's important to know
Yes.
that sometimes that is an upcharge.
And it's not a separate, yeah.
And that's
It's
very
not a
good
separate
to know.
purchase. No, yeah.
Because sometimes you'll get the curriculum and then you'll have to pay for the subscription, so that's good to know.
And it also includes all professional development.
Right, the professional development's built in, and Mr. Alexander, it's a digital license for every student and teacher, and in addition, we're getting essentially what ends up being 10% of hard copy textbooks for emergency situations, which we did at the last adoption as well. The example I like to give is you have a student in the hospital and they can't locate their Chromebook or something like that. We have a number of students who their life circumstances is very, very difficult,
have that option.
and the teacher can say, "Hey, I got a hard copy here," and so they do come in handy for that reason. It is about. When we talk about building equity, we want to make sure we take care of everybody. So there is that small quantity of hard copy, but it's all digital these days. It's all digital. So I want to thank you for your time. I took too much of your time. I owe Miss Jackson for being nice to me. I owe Dr. Caver for letting me slide in here. Everybody, you're so wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to care about this and listen, and thank you for the questions.
Thank you, because this was good. Yeah, I mean, I love listening sometimes to Miss Jackson because she brings that perspective sometimes I don't think about, talking about in the classroom and all those things. So it's good to hear that. But I'm glad that we are doing this for all our kids, so our kids can get law, understand, and when it comes to civic engagement later on in life, it'll be very important for them. I'm sorry, Ms. Cavers, go ahead.
No, not totally listening to everything that you said and in agreement. So thank you so much for joining us today. And as he said, like the insightful discussion and questions and things like that. And so we are looking forward to moving this process along and going through the steps. There was one question, I believe, that Ms. Jackson asked about training, and Mr. Motter did give a description of like the 4-hour training that will be offered. I did want to make sure that I also specify that obviously when we offer training in the summer, then we will definitely be working on a calendar of when the training will be offered, but we can't guarantee that everybody will attend those sessions. So we will have to make sure we have it on the calendar for sessions when we return in the fall as well. But then that's also means when are people actually exposed. So we will do both and.
Thank you for that additional clarification, because that does become concerning because teachers don't want to give up their summers. Now it's voluntary. Then, right, and I understand that completely. Mm-hmm. And that's why I wondered about the adoption versus the training, because, we do what we're comfortable with. So if I'm not comfortable with the curriculum, I'm going into what I know to teach. And then we have this great curriculum that a teacher, and it's not because they're bad teachers, it's like, hey, I got kids here, I got to get busy now, right? And so that's why.
We also learned, through the implementation of the ELA piece this year, which had a few pieces that were not flexible. So we were able to make some decisions that allowed that flexibility and also address the equity where we make sure that everybody has access. And so that was a big part of it, too, the discussions and the planning. Twan and Adam worked really closely together, so.
And so we will do both. But like we said, I think that Mr. Motter definitely helped express the process, and that is as you dig into the work, as you dig into the curriculum, as you align it with the standards that you're teaching and go through the process, that it's a learning curve that is not just a one-time training. It just continues on. So when he talked about the collaboration that will exist between the teachers, it does take that learning curve for that process for numerous time periods, whether it's sit down and and professional development and seeing what the features are and looking at the new curriculum, what does this have to offer, but then also actually planning, using the materials, collaborating, talking with other teachers, and then continuing to develop over the course of the first year. So we'll provide those opportunities. So, all right. And so pretty soon you guys will start to see, or everyone will start to see those materials outside as well as we continue with the next steps of the process. So thank you for your time today, Mr. Alexander. That's all that the team has for you all today, Ms. Jackson.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any more questions or comments. Do we have anything? All right, if we don't have anything good for the order, we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the presentations.